and welcome to Isheywisheystitches podcast number 2. If you're new here, my name is Angela and I am Isheywisheystitches here on YouTube and over on Instagram as well. It is certainly not my full-time job. I'm a secondary school teacher, but I filmed my first podcast a few weeks ago and I had a really amazing response to it. I wasn't expecting that. I got a few subscribers, quite a few views, and my friends have been commenting on it with really nice and lovely comments. So I was really excited actually to film another one, and I've had an incredibly yarny second part to half term as well. So if you haven't seen my last video, I was inspired to film that because I'd recently visited Copenhagen and had a very yarny time. And then this, when I got back, I actually ended up doing a day trip to a place called Lavenham, and that ended up being quite a yarny time as well. I will talk about that later when I talk about new yarn acquisitions, because that's where it's relevant. But for those of you that are new, I will follow a normal format. I'm going to start by talking about what I'm wearing. So this, I love this. It's such a staple for my autumn winter wardrobe. It is called the Cable Cross Cardigan by Knititude. Her first name's Chantel. I'm afraid I'm not going to attempt to try and recall her last name or how to pronounce it, but it is a We Are Knitters collaboration. It was knit with the We Are Knitters yarn called Merrypacker, which is a blend of merino and alpaca. So it's very soft, not at all itchy. It was knit, I think, on 8mm needles, and actually is a really easy piece to make, because you basically knit a rectangle and then you knit the two sleeve bits, which are just other rectangles, and then it's all seamed together, but the magic of seaming makes it into a cardigan. I will do a b-roll or a cutaway so that you can see a bit more about it. After talking about what I'm wearing, I will talk about my finished objects, my whips, and then new yarn acquisitions. Right. Editing Angela here. So this is the Cable Cross cardigan, and yeah, I'll try to get my full body view. I absolutely love it. I love how it sits on my body, and I love it's really flattering. Like if I wear it with I often wear it with leggings, and it just looks so nice and so. It really elevates my outfit. I absolutely love it. Great design, really quick knit, and it looks really complicated, but isn't. So I'm first going to talk to you a bit about a little challenge I set myself. So I, as a school teacher, I have recently had the October half term, and I actually work in a school that has 2 weeks off during that half term holiday. And whilst I haven't made Christmas gift knits for quite a few years now, I think I did loads in 2020, but I haven't really made Christmas gift knits since. This year I decided I would make a few, mainly because the first finished object I'm going to show you was originally going to be for my nephew's birthday, but his birthday is in May, and I thought that was a really bad time to gift a sweater, so I have instead made it for Christmas. And then when I was looking for things to make for my children, I thought, well, rather than just make them and give them, I will make those as Christmas gifts as well, because the majority of these things is yarn that I have in stash, so it will just save a bit of money around Christmas and stop that endless consumerism. So anyway, I set myself a task that in half term I would finish, or I'd get to a certain point in certain whips, and then if I managed that, I would be able to cast on the Astrid sweater, which, if you'll remember from the last podcast, is the one that I tried on in the Knitting for Olive store in Copenhagen. And I've got the poppy blue yarn for that. So if I finished all of those during half term, I'd be allowed to cast that on. completely self-imposed rule, and I don't actually have to follow it at all, except for that I really need to free up some needles to be able to cast it on. So without further ado, this is my first finished object. So this is the Aosta sweater, the child Aosta sweater by the Knit Pearl Girl. It's a pattern that I tested, and I've made many of them. And this is knit in Drops Air. I can't remember what the colour's called. It's a slightly heathered colour, but it's not just a solid colour. So you can see that red has got some tones of black in it. Fairly quick knit. I'm going to make another one for my younger nephew. I started with this one because I wanted to eat that frog, so to speak, so get the biggest task off the needles first. And yeah, this was quite easy to get done and finished. If anything, the thing that I struggled with was the sleeves, because even though they're tiny, doing the sleeves on magic loop is really tedious compared to doing it around the body, where your cable is shorter than than what you're knitting, so you can just keep going and going, whereas the sleeves, I don't have what would you use? You'd probably use 9-inch circulars to get a circumference that would work, where you wouldn't have to do magic loop, and I don't have those for this needle size, which I think was 6mm. So that is, wow, I can't believe I talked so long about this one. So Child Aosta sweater by the Knit Pearl Girl. Really quick knit, great as a gift knit. Both of my daughters have them. I will probably, if I have time, end up making another one for each of them, if not for Christmas, very close to at some point this winter. So get rid of that one. Woo. Okay, the second one, she's not blocked, and this is a little bit of an exclusive. So this is a brand new pattern that, if my video is released when I intend for it to be released, then this pattern is released today. So I'm filming this on Sunday the 10th of November, but I don't intend to put this video up onto YouTube until Tuesday the 12th of November. So this pattern is the Mysa hot water bottle cover. And it's by a very good friend of mine, Anna Stephenson, who is House of Budlier or Yarn Moomin on Instagram. And she has done this pattern in collaboration with Wool Warehouse. I know that quite a few elements of that collaboration are top secret, that she hasn't even told me, but she did invite me to test the pattern, which I did, and I really enjoyed it. This is going to be a Christmas gift, and because the person who it is for may well end up watching this podcast, I'm not going to say who it's for on here. But the yarns. So the purple yarn is left over from the Jessie sweater, which is a Cocoa Knits pattern. It is Woolcott Yarns Origin, I think. I'll post a picture of my finished Jessie sweater here. I knitted that as part of the Cocoa Knits knit along with Tribe Yarns, so Millia Tribe Yarns. But I ended up having almost 2 skeins left over of that. So yeah, that was a good one to use for this hot water bottle cover. And then the blue is a We Are Knitters, it's a We Are Knitters yarn that I also had in stash, and I cannot remember what it's called. I think it was definitely one that was used for baby patterns. So I bought it because I used it to make a hat and gloves and booties for a newborn, but I can't remember what it's called. So hopefully I will be able to look that up and put the information here. But yeah, really fun, enjoyable knit. It's not blocked yet. I'm going to literally have a block party, I think, next weekend, because I've got that Aosta that I need to block, and I've got several knits that will be hopefully finished by then. The next one I was going to finish was this guy. So this is the frog bag for my daughter's Christmas present, and as you can see, it's not finished. So I've done one hand, but all the other legs don't have hands or feet yet, and I need to put a zip in here, which I had no idea how to do. So I actually took it into work last week and asked someone, and they've given me instructions on how to do it. So I feel fairly confident on doing that now. But yeah, I just need, I mean, the finishing of the crocheting of the toes and fingers will not take very long, and the weaving in ends won't take very long. The zip will probably take me a good, couple of hours to do, and I need to do it when no one else is in the house. Firstly, because I don't want my daughter to see it, but secondly, because I need to be able to concentrate, and I can't concentrate on that kind of task when anyone else is around me. So that needs to wait for one of the afternoons when I am not at school, but also not as motivated as I have been lately to do my working out training, because at the moment I've been quite good at going to the gym on those afternoons. So this guy is not finished, but I'm confident of finishing it in an afternoon, and then wrapping it. So if I'd got to this stage on this but had finished all the other things I said I would, then maybe I would have cast on that Astrid, but I guess I've told you that I didn't manage to finish everything else that I had planned. Oh, just found my hairbrush in that bag. I haven't not brushed my hair, I've just been using a different one. Okay, so the next one is another gift for my daughter. This is the Sweetshop blanket, and I think at the time I showed it to you last, I'd maybe done 7 or 8 squares of it. Anyway, my goal in the half term was to do 8 more squares, and I've only managed 4. Is that right? Well, 3.5. So nowhere near. I want it to get to 30 squares to be able to gift to my daughter at Christmas, and I can then add to it. I think what I'm going to do now is I'm going to knit it, I'm going to finish a row and then finish a column. And if it happens that I get to like 24 squares, say, and it's like the 20th of December, I'm not going to put loads of pressure on myself. What I'll do is I will gift it to her like that, and then I'll probably take it away from her at some point to add that next row, because the great thing about the pattern, it's Sweetshop blanket by Laura Penrose, by the way. The great thing about the pattern is the way the edges are finished, you can always pick up and add more to it. So whilst I didn't finish what I wanted to during the half term, it is that kind of pick up and do a little bit sort of pattern, so I'm not going to let myself get stressed over it. Okay, the next one I was going to finish and actually did not even open was from my Christmas Advent from Toft. So this was last year's Advent, and it had 3 characters from the Nutcracker. This one is the Sugar Plum Fairy, and as you can see, she hasn't got a face, she hasn't quite got all of her hair yet, but otherwise is... Oh, I think she needs a tiara as well, but otherwise pretty much there. Then we have... Oh, can't see in here. It's a big mess of all the other extra bits now. Then we have the Nutcracker. Again, he doesn't have a face or hair. Does have a hat though. And then we have... Ooh, can't see. We have the Mouse King, who doesn't have any legs. He does have legs, they're just not sewn on. Oh, where are they? Can't remember if that cape is for the Mouse King. Yeah, that cape I think is for the Mouse King. So yeah, the Mouse King does have legs. I have done the legs, I just haven't sewn them on yet. Okay, so the Mouse King does have legs. I have made the legs, but obviously there's just a little bit of finishing on each of them. Again, that is, I think, an afternoon's work, and maybe it's an afternoon when I'm home from school and no one else is in the house. Maybe it's an evening's work, but it's really sewing, and that's not what why I do my craft. So that's why I think I haven't picked it up, but it's definitely a discrete piece of work. That said, I want to get it finished before this month is over, and that's why I wanted to get it done in the half term, because I've ordered the Toft Advent again. I really, really, really enjoyed working on it last year, and I kept up with it right until the school broke up. So I'm really looking forward to doing it again this year, but I will struggle to start it again, to keep up with it if I know that I've got those 3 Nutcracker characters hanging over my head. So hopefully I will get that done ASAP. And then I think this is the last piece I wanted to finish. This is the Hipster hat for my husband. I spoke a lot about it in my last video, so I'm not going to say any more. I didn't finish it. I only got about that far, actually. I've done most of this bit in the last day or two, because I really want to get it finished now. So that's Hipster hat by Petite Knit. And the other whip that I wanted to get to a certain stage by the end of the half term was this. So this is the Loddon sweater. I've lost the yarn. So Loddon sweater by the Knit Pearl Girl. It is in testing, and I wanted to finish the yoke, which I did actually manage by the end of half term. I've now knit quite a lot more on it. So this is in Knitting for Olive merino and soft silk mohair held together. I got both of them on my trip to Copenhagen from the actual Knitting for Olive shop, and it's in the colour mustard. And yeah, so I've joined in the round now, and it's now in that really boring stockinette only section. And my tip, or the way I work through those sections, because I tend to need something that's a little bit complicated in my knitting, otherwise I just put it down all the time and scroll on Instagram or whatever. So what I did is I put a stitch marker in here, and then I've done a rough calculation of how many stitches I would need to get it to the required length. And at that point, I think it was, I can't remember what it was. All I know is that at the start of this weekend, which I'd probably done about 4 centimetres then, so at the start of this weekend, I think I needed to do about 9,000 stitches. And so then I'm counting. So I'm counting in my head 100 stitches at a time to get me through to the 1,000. Sometimes I actually do a colouring in chart. I've not done that for this because I thought, oh, 9,000, I just do 3,000 a day. I did 3,000 on Friday. So yeah, 3,000 on Friday. I actually only managed 2,000 yesterday, Saturday. I've done 500 so far today, but my peak knitting time is in the evening, so I imagine I will manage to get 3,000 ticked off. So I won't manage the 9,000, but it's the only way that motivates me to do this stockinette and get chunks of it done. And yes, I could just pick it up and put it down again, but if I don't get to the sort of end of the body, it will end up being a piece of knitting that I start resenting, to be honest. Whereas if I get to the end of the body, I'll know I just have to do the ribbing and 2 sleeves, and then I can get it, and I can get that done sort of within a week. The deadline for the test is, I think, the 11th of December. So if I can get to the point where all I've got to do is sleeves and the hem within the next week, then it's not, I don't feel like it's hanging over me, and I can work through the rest of it at my own pace and taking other knits into account. So that one is a whip, going along nicely. It is, I don't think there are any problems with the pattern at all, so I'm sure that is on track to be released when Sophie plans to. Next, I have a swatch, a teeny tiny swatch, because I've got another test now that's not yet on the needles because I've only got as far as swatching it. So this is for the Midland neck or Dicky by Laura Penrose as well. I do a lot of Laura Penrose knits, and the yarn is Sorella yarn Cashmere DK. I'm reading off the back of the ball band. So it's 80%, I can't read what that says, 80% something wool, 10% cashmere, 10% nylon. And I got the test size child, so this will be a dicky or a neck for my daughter, the other one, so not the one that's getting the frog or the Sweetshop blanket. So I've gauge swatched. The way that the Midland patterns work is that it's a sideways knit, and so row gauge is more important than stitch gauge, and my row gauge is always a bit off, but then I feel like garter stitch is so unreliable with gauge. Like even now I've just pulled it widthways a couple of times and it's happily sat wider than it was when I took it off the blocking mats. So I'm not sure quite what I'm going to do in terms of continuing with the needle size I use for the gauge or not. I'm going to have a think on that. But you notice that the swatch is still attached to this lovely hand-dyed yarn because the pattern says I need 200 meters and this is 231 yards. So I fear that I might run out. So I'm going to measure the gauge on this when I'm ready to cast on, which hopefully will be this evening, and then unravel the swatch so that I can just get straight on with knitting it and not fear running out. So that has so the Midland neck was not part of my get things finished to be able to cast on the Astrid. That's just my latest will be whip. So I didn't manage to get all of those things finished, and I haven't cast on the Astrid. I'm also conscious that I really need to cast on the next child Aosta sweater for my nephew. Now I'm quite confident that I can get that hat finished by Tuesday, and those Nutcracker characters, again, that's a one evening or one afternoon's worth of knitting. So I think I can get those two finished by the end of this week, in which case I'm going to cast on the Astrid and I'm going to cast on the second child Aosta. It will also free up lots of needles that I need for various projects. But there is a languishing whip I have here that I wanted to talk about. So I'll give you a bit more backstory actually. So yesterday I went shopping and I got a lovely pair of leopard print jeans. I'll post a picture here. But the sweater I'm wearing is also from the same shop and I really, really liked it. But I don't tend to buy knitwear because, well, one, because I can make it and I enjoy making it, and two, because I get really appalled by how expensive things are given the high quantity of synthetic fabrics. And this was the same really. The sweater that I tried on, as lovely as it was, and it did have some alpaca in it as well, but it was a right. Hello again, this is Angela Isheywisheystitches, and I am recording a few days later. So on Sunday when I was recording my podcast, my phone ran out of storage space and I couldn't spend the time trying to find the space and re-recording. I literally had no more time left. I had to get on with cooking the dinner and doing the usual Sunday night stuff. So I said to myself, well, I couldn't launch this video until Tuesday, so I will record the rest again on Tuesday. So first off, what I'm wearing, because I'm wearing something different. So this is called Jessie by Cocoa Knits. I knit it in the Tribe and Cocoa Knits knit along earlier this year, I think think it was around March time, if I recall correctly, and you'll recognise the yarn because it's the same yarn that I used in the Mysa hot water bottle cover, which is launched today by my lovely friend Anna Stephenson. So yes, when I finished recording the last little section on Sunday, I was talking about a sweater that I tried on in a shop that I really, really liked, but did not buy because I tend not to buy knitwear, because I was just, you know, so surprised by how much it costs, given that there was such a lot of synthetic material in it. So first off, if you know a pattern that would match it, please let me know. And secondly, I was talking about how I was looking for a pattern that would match it on the petiteknit website, and whilst I didn't find a suitable alternative, I did find another pattern called the Louisiana sweater. So the Louisiana sweater uses three strands of Isheywisheystitches boucle, and I have Isheywisheystitches boucle in stash in this colour, which I absolutely love. It's called colour 56. I don't think it has a name. But when I bought it, oh, and it's 100% alpaca as well. I'm very into the alpaca at the moment. It turns out that as much as I love wool, I'm a little bit sensitive to it. So even this one, I'm fine to an extent. Like, I've been wearing this all day, but it's about, oh, I don't have my watch on. It's about 2 o'clock in the afternoon now. And I would start noticing it feeling itchy on the back of my neck maybe a little later this evening. So alpaca's good. I don't tend to react to that. I digress. So the Louisiana sweater uses 3 strands of this, but it's currently on a whip. That this is the second time I've cast this sweater on, but I used a different boucle, and I thought that I was struggling with the sweater because the other boucle I used was too thick. But this is the second time I've cast this sweater on, not got very far, and it's ended up sat in a whip bag not being worked on. And that's very unusual for me. Like, if I'm working on a sweater and I'm still in the raglan increases, I'm usually quite motivated to get on with it. So I think that this is one that needs to be ripped out, and instead I'm going to buy the extra balls of yarn to do the Louisiana sweater. And the big advantage of that is it's on 8mm needles, which means that if I start it fairly soon, that's something I can envisage being done by the end of this year and being able to wear it this sort of winter season. So yeah, I think that's what I'm going to do. So that's all my whips, or potential whips, spoken about, I think. Can't remember quite what I said on Sunday, and I just wing it. I didn't write notes this time. So I need to talk about new yarn acquisitions, and there's just one. So this one is Lavenham blue, and it's a hand dyed, and actually the yarn is sourced all in this part of the world. So this is dyed by Stuart at the Wool Patch, and he the reason I came across it, actually, I'll tell you a bit of a life update. So my last podcast was all about my trip to Copenhagen and all the yarn I got there. So I will make this section of the podcast about a lovely day trip I did in the half-term holiday to a town called Lavenham. So Lavenham is a medieval wool town, and in the Middle Ages, that's what we call it, in the Middle Ages, it was actually one of the wealthiest settlements in the country due to wool. We visited because my daughter has been learning about the Great Fire of London and Tudor houses, and it's a great place to visit for Tudor houses. So we went there for the day, and I must say that the visit far exceeded my expectations. One really fun thing we saw was this orange Tudor house, and I'll post a picture beside me, which is actually the house that the poem The Crooked House was based on. And when I was looking at it and I noticed that their door knocker was a cat chasing a rat, my daughter went up to have a closer look, and then they actually knocked on the door from the inside and posted a piece of information out for us to see, and it was really lovely. It had all of this information about the history of the Crooked House, including the poem, and it really made our day. So really fun day out. Anyway, I went to a museum in Lavenham and came across this yarn, and it's really lovely. And then on the information sheet I saw it had been dyed by Stuart at the Woolpatch, and now I knew of Stuart because he was he's friends with the owners at Yarnworks, so I've come across him a few times but not been to his shop. But since we were quite nearby, we decided we would go and visit his shop, the Woolpatch, and so we did, and there was a lot more of this Lavenham blue there. We ended up having a really nice chat about Tudor houses, and about the history of this yarn and how the blue colour came about. It's from a dye called woad, which is from a plant, and we talked a bit about how the history of blue dyes in particular being incredibly expensive because it's quite a difficult colour to come by, and it actually made me think of a bit of my heritage. So I'm half Nigerian, and there's a particular fabric that's used quite often, that is used for dye printing, and I think it's batik, and that's the ones that I'm familiar with. It's a really beautiful blue, like an indigo almost, dye. So yeah, it was quite interesting. So that was my fun day out. I think I've re-recorded all the parts I planned to, although I've said them slightly differently. So yeah, I think that's it for the podcast. In terms of life update, there's not really much to tell. Still a teacher, still got two lovely children and a husband. Just getting really excited for Christmas coming up. Don't we find this term is a bit challenging though? I'm really noticing just how feeling much more tired, because even today at 2 in the afternoon, look how grey and dreary it is. I've literally got every light that's in my bedroom on so that I could film this. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate all the lovely comments that I was left last time, and all the subscribers and so on. It was a really lovely welcome to the world of podcasting. And yeah, I will see you in my next one. Thanks for watching. Bye.